The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, started on Thursday an international tour that will take him to the countries in Central America and the Caribbean. The President said that among the topics to be discussed are migration and cooperation for regional development. In Argentina, social organizations mobilized in front of the Supreme Court to demand a democratization of the justice system. And Belarus denounces that Western forces are preparing to conduct military operations in areas bordering Russia. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your anchor Gladys Quesada from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Now we begin. The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, began an international tour of Central America and the Caribbean to reaffirm the region's cooperation and integration ties. Guatemala will be the first stop where the Mexican president is expected to meet with his counterpart Alejandro Giammattei. According to the schedule, on Friday he will leave to Honduras, continue on to Belize, and finally meet with President Diaz-Canel in Havana. The agenda establishes balanced talks and reaffirmation of bilateral and regional cooperation agreements, with special emphasis on the migration issue and its complications.
We are cooperating to implement in Central America two programs that are being successfully implemented in Mexico. They are Sowing Life and Youth Building a Future. We are going to study ways in which to strengthen relations with nations in Central America and the Caribbean, with all of the Americas.
And more than 330 cases of human rights violations have been reported in El Salvador over the last few weeks. Salvadoran humanitarian organizations report having received more than 300 complaints of human rights violations during the state of exception decreed by the executive. According to the report, most of the complaints relate to cases of arbitrary detentions by the national police during the latest crackdown on gangs. And Panama's Interior Transporter Council is organizing a strike on Thursday in the province of Chiriquí. The transporters demand fares revision by the government and that the progress be made in the granting of concessions for land routes in the region. The union expressed its will for a dialogue to solve the conflict. As part of the strike, the drivers are planning to hold the mass transport terminal of the Chiriquí province. In Colombia, presidential candidate for the Historical Pact coalition, Gustavo Petro, resumed his campaign activities after denouncing threats to kill him. According to his campaign office, Petro canceled events in the country's Coffee region on Monday over a plot by a crime gang known as La Cordillera to assassinate him. The candidate, who is in the front runner in Colombia's presidential election, continued his tour towards the north of Santander, the city of Valledupar, and the departments of Bolívar and Chocó. After denouncing the plot to assassinate him, Colombia's government provided the left-wing candidate with extra security ahead of the first round of the voting on May 29th. The Colombian armed group Clan del Golfo announced an armed strike in 4 departments of the country due to the extradition to the United States of Darío Antonio Úsuga, also known as Otoniel. The Guianista Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, the AGC, announced that the armed strike will last 4 days and those who do not obey the order will be discharged. The first violent actions of the armed strike took place in the departments of Cesar and Sucre, where bus burnings were reported, while the greatest tension is in Antioquia, where Otoniel lived. Military and national police forces deployed a special security device on the main highways of the departments of Antioquia, Córdoba, and Bolívar. The Brazilian armed forces assured the Supreme Court that will respect the process around the upcoming presidential elections in October. The statement was made by the President of the Federal Supreme Court, Luiz Fuz, after a meeting this past Tuesday night with the Brazilian Minister of Defense, General Paulo Sergio Nogueira de Oliveira. Fuz underscored that the Brazilian Supreme Court aims at safeguarding harmony between the powers, respect for institutions, and democracy in the country. Brazil enters the electoral campaign in a scenario of polarization, with President Jair Bolsonaro championing the idea that the armed forces should carry out a parallel vote count, accusing the Superior Electoral Court of lack of transparency. And the Peruvian Congress admitted the interpellation of the Prime Minister Aníbal Torres for his handling of the cargo transporters strike and his role in the institution and the Constitution project promoted by the executive. The proposal was approved with 73 votes in favor, 42 against. Therefore, the head of the Council of Ministers will have to appear before the legislative in the plenary next May 12th. The questions of the interpellation will revolve around Aníbal Torres' management of the violent protests of cargo transporters and a bill promoted by the national government that seeks to draft a new constitution. For his part, Torres stated that he is prepared for everything and considers that the Congress is going to remove him from office. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Argentina on Thursday, human rights organizations, labor unions, and social movements will march to the Supreme Court to demand the democratization of justice. The rally will be held in front of the courthouse. The mothers of Plaza de Mayo, relatives of those missing or detained for political reasons, different movements for human rights, the Argentine League for Human Rights, and other social and political organizations will take part in the mobilization. Demonstrators call for a democratic, feminist, and independent justice. In addition, they demand the resignation of the president of the highest court of the country, Horacio Rosati. The Chilean Constitutional Convention approved on Wednesday an article that guarantees the right of indigenous peoples and nations to their lands, territories, and resources in the future Magna Carta. The Chilean constituents voted on Article 21st in the framework of the revision of the new report of the Fundamental Rights Commission. It was approved by 106 votes in favor, 37 against, and 10 abstentions. This article also establishes that the Chilean state must create a legal instrument that guarantees the restitution, reparation, and regularization of lands to the indigenous peoples. Analysts assure that together with the Constitutional Declaration of Chile as a plurinational state, this article is in favor of ancestral lands is one of the most important achievements of indigenous peoples in the constituent body. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Felix Plasencia continues his official agenda during his visit to the plurinational Republic of Bolivia. The Venezuelan diplomat pointed out that Bolivia and Venezuela are committed to multilateralism against interferenceism, which only causes pain and war to the region. As part of his work agenda, the Venezuelan foreign minister is expected to meet with the Bolivian president, Luis Arce, as well as with former president Evo Morales to review issues of bilateral interest. In addition, Plasencia addressed his rejection of the intentions of the government of the United States to exclude several countries of the region from the Summit of the Americas.
We support the strong statement of President Luis Arce and the responsible comments of Foreign Minister Maita. We join in this effort to reject and denounce the possibility of unilaterally deciding who is American and who is not American. The responsible peoples, the responsible governments of the region cannot allow this to happen without raising our voice in rejection.
In Haiti, the 400 Mawozo gang leader who kidnapped 16 U.S. missionaries last year was extradited to the U.S., National Police confirmed. The Haitian authorities assured that Jermaine Joly, better known as John John, was extradited to the United States aboard of a special FBI plane. The gang leader is wanted in the District of Colombia for the crimes of arms smuggling and the kidnapping of 16 U.S. missionaries and a Canadian missionaries in October last year. And Somalia will hold its presidential elections on May 15th. The Somali parliament announced on Thursday that the long-awaited presidential election will finally take place and that its 329 members will elect the nation's 10th president. The election date will coincide with the 79th anniversary of the Somali Youth League, formed on May 15th, 1943 by 13 young activists who spearheaded the struggle for a united and independent Somalia. The presidential candidates are scheduled to address Parliament ahead of the vote on May 11th and 12th in order to present their respective government policies proposals. The presidential election is in 15 months behind schedule and comes after Somalia concluded parliamentary elections in April. Tunisian journalists protest against what they say is growing repression and intimidation against the press since President Kais Saied's power grab last year. The demonstration was organized by the National Journalists Union, the SNJT, which condemned authorities' attempts to tame media outlets and turn them into propaganda channels. Saied last July sacked the government and suspended the parliament and dissolved the assembly, ruling by decree, and seized control of key state institutions, including the judiciary and the electoral authority. According to the SNJT, Saied has not held a single open press conference since his power grab, reflecting a communications policy that does not recognize citizens' right to know what is happening in the country.
Threats already existed for the last 10 years, but after July 25th, the threats have become more pronounced. They are more violent and affect the whole sector. It is true that during the last 10 years, the sector was marginalized and suffered from attempts to control it by the authorities and parties in power. We thought that after July 25th, attitudes would change.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. And we are back. Belarus denounced that Western powers are preparing to carry out military operations in Russia's neighboring areas. The headquarters of Belarus armed forces informed that Western countries, led by the US and NATO, continue to concentrate troops in Eastern Europe in order to prepare for military operations in that region. Minsk warns that NATO has doubled its forces and that its attacks units may be deployed near the borders of Russia and Belarus in a very short time. In contrast, the NATO Military Committee declared that the NATO-Russia Founding Act on Security formed in 1997 will not serve as a deterrent for the bloc. And Russia expelled 7 Danish diplomats in response to similar action by the comprehensive government. The Russian Foreign Ministry officially notified the Danish embassy in Moscow that 7 of its employees have been declared persona non grata by Russia. The ministry notified that the 7 employees had 2 weeks to leave the national territory and explained that the Kremlin reserves the right to take additional measures in response to Copenhagen's hostile actions, which will be notified to the Danish side at a later date. The Russian Foreign Ministry summoned Denmark's ambassador in Moscow, Karsten Sondergaard, and protested against the unjustified expulsion of Russian diplomats from its embassy in Denmark. The Russian Federation's coordinating headquarters for humanitarian response has announced the opening of a humanitarian corridor in the Azovstal steel plant in Ukraine. On humanitarian grounds, Russia ordered its armed forces that from 800 hours to 1800 hours local time, as of this Thursday through May the 7th, they should open a corridor from the territory of the Azovstal steel plant to evacuate civilians, women, children, and factory workers. They will notify and require the presence of representatives from United Nations, the Russian armed forces, and of the Donetsk militia. The militia will unilaterally cease any hostilities and will withdraw to a safe distance, ensuring the transfer of civilians to the destination of their choice. And Russia reported on Thursday the destruction of several military facilities in Ukraine. Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson General Igor Kinashenkov reported in his daily briefing that the high-precision air-launched missiles destroyed Ukrainian aviation equipment at the airfield near Kirovograd, an ammunition depot in Mykolaiv and fuel depot in Mykolaiv region. According to Konashenkov, operational, tactical and army aviation of the Russian aerospace forces hit 93 areas of concentrated manpower and Ukrainian military equipment. In the same report, the ministry spokesperson stated that Russian artillery units destroyed over 600 Ukrainian troops and 61 units of weapons and military equipment. European Union members did not rule out the possibility of the bloc reaching an agreement by the end of the week to ban all imports from Russia. The French government pointed out the proposal needs to be unanimously approved to take effect. Authorities of the bloc indicated there are ongoing discussions on this issue because some European nations are highly dependent on Russia for energy supplies. In this sense, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen assured that the phase-out on Russian oil will be done in an orderly fashion, in a way that allows its members and partners to secure alternative supply routes and minimizes the impact on global markets. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, along with 10 independent oil-producing countries, held a virtual meeting on Thursday to discuss production increases to which they had agreed since June 2021 in order to restore production to pre-pandemic levels. Although this meeting is in keeping with the organization's regularly scheduled monthly meetings, it takes place one day after the European Union announced measures to reduce its dependency on Russian oil, to exert pressure on Russia for its conflict in Ukraine. Still, the European Union prevents exceptions to be made in the case of such countries as Hungary and Slovakia. The announcement by the European Union has already caused price hikes in oil world markets. Now we move on to other topics. The World Health Organization, WHO, estimates nearly 15 million people were killed, either by the coronavirus or by its impact on overwhelmed health systems in the past 2 years, according to Wilhelm Zembry, technical officer at WHO.
Globally, we estimate 14.9 million excess deaths associated with the COVID-19 pandemic by 31 December of 2021. So this estimate ranges from 13.3 million to 16.6 million. There were 5.4 million reported COVID-19 deaths to WHO over this period. So this excess estimate represents 9.5 million more deaths, or 2.75 times more deaths than reported. Most of the excess deaths, that's 84%, are concentrated in Southeast Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Lower middle income and upper middle income countries account for 81% of this 14.9 million number.
And the South African Health Department unpacked new COVID-19 rules, including the mandatory use of face masks in public spaces. The new regulations came at a time when South Africa reported a new wave of COVID-19. Children will wear masks in school, and adults are also required to wear masks in enclosed public places. For any indoor and outdoor plant assembly or meeting involving more than 100 people, a maximum of 50% of the venue capacity may be occupied if all attendees are vaccinated. Regarding travels, all international visitors must be vaccinated and show a vaccination certificate or provide a negative PCR test result not older than 72 hours. South Africa is the continent's most affected country by COVID-19. Here, less than 45% of the adult population is fully vaccinated. So we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website, on telesurenglish.net. Also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.